Hello. All right. Okay. So it, Hey guys, good evening. We'll wait for a few more minutes till your friends are here, and then we'll start. Mhm.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. I would like to start off by explaining what are the basic concepts and what we are trying to achieve today. So here we have uh, a, a week 2 solution, and it's been given to you in a WAR format. A WAR is a web archive, a web application which is archived in an WAR format. So it is similar to how we have jar for Java archives and APK for Android archives, Android app archives. We have WAR for web-based application archives. And this is a web-based application which is based on the MVC design. MVC is model view controller. I hope you all know what MVC is, or would you like me to explain what is MVC?
Could you please explain?
Hello?
Could you please explain? It will be helpful for me. Thank you.
Hello? Can you be more clear?
Could you please explain? I was finding it a little difficult to understand.
Sure. Okay. Okay. I will explain. I'll just pick up a diagram. So here we have a model view controller architecture. So this model view controller architecture is based on inversion of control, the concept of inversion of control. Imagine I give you a task, like we have a refolio, and then I tell you that we shouldn't be using Git. What you would be doing is you need to push all the code in your drive, and then you also need to have an older version of that code, and then you also need to tell me what changes I have done. So you can imagine, right? I'm asking you to do all the things that are possible, easily possible with the help of a Git, but I'm reinventing the wheel. So what would happen is that we are not containerizing stuff. We are doing things again and again. Okay, so that is the idea which gave rise to this inversion of control concept. The inversion of control concept says that any particular component should not do anything which is not uh, what he's not supposed to do. All right, so what we need to do is we need to split the application into these individual components so that it becomes more manageable and more easy to maintain. So that is why we have this model, view, and the controller. A view is something basically that is the front end of our application. A controller, and okay, I'll explain model first. A model is an entity which interacts with our database. All right. So whichever data that comes from the database doesn't directly go to the front end, it goes into a model, and then from model it moves on to the view. How that happens is with the help of a controller. A controller orchestrates the flow of the entire application. And what happens is every request that comes in goes to this controller, and every response, what this controller does is this controller, if it has the business logic, ideally it shouldn't have the business logic, but if it has the business logic, it would utilize the business logic to generate an outcome, and on generating the outcome it would send it back to the view and to the user. So this is the basic MVC architecture. So the main aim for having the MVC architecture is scalability and maintainability of our application. So moving on to our JSF here, JSF framework, you can see here, we have several packages. The same way as we are arranging our application into components, we have packages in our application. So for example, right now in this package, we have the constant class. The reason why we have the constant class here is because we don't want to have the same contact person first to be declared everywhere throughout the application. What would happen is if we declare this throughout the application, uh, whenever there is some change, we'll have to change it at multiple locations. If we have it at centralized location, just one change will be reflected throughout the application. Then we have our controllers, and first I'll move on to the entity. An entity here is the actual model that we are using to communicate with the database. So as we have here is the string, street address, number, suburb, postcode, street, etc. And we are setting it in its constructor. Then we have the repository. A repository architecture is, I'll explain you why we need to have a repository architecture. Imagine we have, I'll just pick up. Imagine we have our database layer here. Okay, and here's our controller. And then comes the view. Okay, and the model. All right. So what happens here, whenever we have to communicate with the data layer, we can't be having individual commands like basically with web application, most you do is CRUD operations. CRUD is create, read, update, and delete. So you can't have multiple reads and multiple updates or multiple writes throughout our application. For example, we have get me user details based on username, and then we have get me user details based on first name or last name. They are basically the same operations, but we can't have every single method having the code to go to the database, read the content from the database, filter it based on the username or first name or last name. So what we do is we separate out these common functionalities in a mid layer. This layer is the repository layer. This repository layer usually has the CRUD operations that we need to do. And then based on this repository layer, we have our controller, we have our model, and then comes here our database. So the repository talks to the CRUD and usually sends the data to the model. All right. And then the controller would communicate with the model to send the data to the view. Okay. So here's the arrangement that we have. And this would be the end user using the application. All right. So here we have the repository. If I can, are you guys okay? Can I clear the screen? So if you're good, okay, I'll take your no as yes. I'll take your silence as yes, and I'll clear it. Now, so here you see, it's the same thing. We are moving data in and out of the application. Then we have the entities. An entity is a plain old Java object, POJO, a model which serves to get the data from the repository and then serve it to the controller. Why we do this? The most obvious reason to have models is having our data strongly typed. This enables this prevents typos and various mistakes that goes in. For example, if you forgot to add an e, then there would be a lot of mess just because you don't have e. So this bounds you from performing wrong actions or going to an exceptional behavior. Then an entity usually does not have any business logic. It just has a its own properties, and then it has the getters and setters associated with that entity. Now here's our controller. This is the orchestrator who moves around, who sets data through to all the pages and gets data from the repository. So it acts as an intermediary controlling the entire flow of the application. Now, moving on to managed bean. A managed bean is used, all these concepts that we looked into right now, they are across all the frameworks, across all the applications that we are, or across all the frameworks and across all the languages that we would be working with. But managed bean is a concept which is specific only to JSF. There are versions of managed bean in the C Sharp's MVC library, but we're not going to look at it. So if we look at this, basically, let's look at first an XHTML page. An XHTML or the web content of this WAR file has all the front end things that we want to have in our application. For example, if we want to have an ad page, a details page. So what happens is this XHTML page gets translated into an HTML page or gets converted into its HTML content. So you see here, we have this. This is essentially our expression language. You might not have seen this in an HTML page. If you try doing this in an HTML page, you'll see this as a direct outcome. But what happens is while compiling, the JSF engine would actually calculate this content. So in this case, we have this page title, which resides in the title controller. Let's take an example, which is related or directly linked to this property managed property managed bean. So here property.street address. So a managed bean is characterized by or has these requirements. First of all, it has managed bean as uh, an attribute associated with it, and it is a special kind of entity. This entity is directly linked with the view. All right, and this should be serializable. So the object state should be saved and retrieved. Serialization is another concept. You can have a look at it on Google. So these are a few requirements when it comes to managed bean. Managed bean has a few has some business logic in it. It's not a pure entity like we have in a POJO or an entity class. So it's not a pure object. And then so you can see here what we are trying to do essentially is we are getting this data from the property controller and sending it to the view. It returns this property, okay, and this property would be served in this details.html page, and we can directly access content from this property class. So this was the controller, the constants, entities, and managed bean and repository. What else can I show you?
Okay, Pratik, if you're done, I'll share a few more things. Is it okay?
Sure.
Do you
I'll
want
stop
to
sharing.
Yes, please. Hey guys, so thanks Pratik for very beautiful introduction and a lot of concept covering.
Thank you.
Okay, and yeah. So guys, we'll quickly build something. We'll build a project. So I always keep my stuff in my documents. So documents, FIT5042, that's my workspace. And then lab week 2. This was my trial. I'll create a new workspace. Week 2 demo. This is my workspace. And where's Eclipse? So I start Eclipse. So it prompts me, what's my workspace? I just browse to the location. Demo is my workspace. Say open, then launch. So I keep my workspaces specific to specific week projects. All right. So I go to the workbench. then need this. So I need to create a web project. Right click, new dynamic web project. That's what I'm going to create one. But I know that I cannot run the project just like that. I need an application server runtime. So I'll first create a server. So in this workspace, I don't have the server, but yeah, I have downloaded the zip file and I have Glassface installed. So I should be able to create one for this lab. Glassface. The host name is localhost because it's running in my local. Server name, I'll just call it Week2 demo. You can give any name. Then next, call it as a Week2 demo. I'll copy for the time being, and then point where my Glassface is installed. So that's the location. And it will run on the domain one. That's fine. Rest all things is okay. Finish. So if you're deploying for the first time, you'll probably need a console. So Windows, so perspective, I need a console. And I always keep my server logs with me to keep an eye on it because that's very important. So I have some existing server logs. I don't want to go through it. I'll just remove it, save it, and then done. Unsave. So I got a server to run through. Now I can go ahead and create a project, a dynamic web project. I'll call it as Week2 demo. And because it's a web project and the executable that will be created, as Pratik explained a few minutes back, the executable is a web archive. So I'll just try to suffix it with something called as W or var or something like that. I'm using my default location, target runtime demo, module version. I need to run it as a Java server faces project. Doesn't matter 2.2 or 2.3. You may have a little bit of annotations here and there, not much of a difference, but you can go ahead and check. Make sure web modules are selected, Glassface extensions are selected, Java is selected, and Java server faces. You want to run it on Java 2.2, you can change it to 2.2. If you don't want, then it's still fine. It will run in 2.3 as well. And after that, so this is where your source files or the Java class files will be saved. And this is the output folder where the compiled class files going to be saved. So next, so that's the context root. So context root is very important because that's the, we'll see how it is important when we execute the project. Context root forms the path. It is the path in which the project is going to be executed. I think you guys would have by now would have known by executing the loan project, interest calculator project. I'll just select WebXML. So WebXML is a deployment descriptor configuration files. And then next. So that's the JSF configuration file, faces config, JSF servlet name is faces servlet. There's the servlet class name, there's the URL mapping. That's fine, that's everything okay. And then I finish. So we'll go through one by one. So that's how the project structure should look like. So if you see here, by the time it finishes installing the modules. I'll show you. This is a dynamic web project. This web project contains Java files. These Java files are stored under source package. And all the compiled classes those are built will be stored under build. You will see that web content contains two important configuration folders, meta-inf and web-inf. We don't have to touch meta-inf, it's the metadata that is created. So web-inf contains three important files. One is faces config, which contain the versions of JSF you're using, and then glassface XML, which contains which server to run in, and because glassface zip that you have downloaded and installed from the marketplace is actually a Maven project, so it does the installations very runtime. So by the time when you see the web app is nothing, but when it runs, it downloads those files and runs that project. And the third one is, okay, I did cover. One is the web XML deployment descriptor, faces config XML, and glassface XML. So the remaining three files here, remaining four files here, add XHTML, detail XHTML, edit.xhtml, and index.xhtml. These are all JSF pages. JSF pages are written in JSF. So it's a specific format to write web pages. Now, why this specific format? Because this specific format will be compiled by the JSF Faces servlet engine. Faces servlet engine again has a servlet engine inside it. So they will be compiled and will be rendered with an HTML output. We'll see as and when the state of the thing progress. So at the moment, it is empty. Another important thing that is contained inside web content is resources. Any external resources, as in like if you're building a specific style set or a CSS or JavaScript or images, they're all stored under external resources here. All right. And if you see, if you have created any web resources or managed bin, it will probably appear up here. It will appear up here in the beans part. So this is web resources which will be deployed. So there is there are multiple aspects to a project building. One part is developing codes, Java code, developing Java server face pages, and the third part is doing the configuration. So building the project, coding and configuration is one part. The second part is the first part is development, which consists of coding and configuration. The second part is build phase, where the .var is created. .var is your executable, web executable. Once that is created, the next step after build is execution. So that has to be deployed to that var file will be deployed to a server, here glassface server, and then you can execute it. Like it will listen to your request and start responding. We have a message here. Somebody put something in the chat. What's the difference between XHTML and JSP?
Okay.
So XHTML is external HTML, and it is initially when if you have seen worked with JSF 1.1 versions, they used to have this extension called .jsf. Even some framework they still use .jsf. So you can construct the JSF pages based on XHTML. I'll tell you what are the few directives those are used to make a XHTML page a JSF page. Well, JSP is also a technology that embeds Java inside web HTML pages. Those will have .jsp as an extension. So as a part of the evolution, we have covered that in first week lecture. If you haven't paid attention, there was first servlet engine, and servlet engine used to have HTML inside Java. Then the technology was made more flexible. They created JSP framework where they had Java inside HTML. And then we have evolved that much better in JSF framework. Even in your projects, you can use JSP for your web page development. When we'll develop Spring MVC part, you'll probably see some development being done on JSP. Cool. So continuing with that, where did I left? Okay, so that's the project, and that's my server. I have to create some classes here, and I also have to build my web pages here, and I can see what's existing web XML look like. I haven't made a change. This is a very important file. So it looks like this. So this is the welcome file list. You can have any of these as a welcome file list. It's fine. It is using this, the web app is using these extensions, these namespaces, these schema locations. Probably they're using much higher versions. We'll probably use 3.1. And they're using servlet engine. You can have a faces servlet, you can have a dispatcher servlet. So dispatcher servlet is basically for Spring thing. We'll see that when we come. So you can have multiple servlet engine in the web XML. You can have JSF in parallel along with JSP technology. So one important thing you need to mark here is the servlet mapping. So anything that is parsed by the XHTML file that you have requested, if it has come from faces servlet, that is, it has been responded back by the servlet engine, then it will have a URL pattern prefixed with faces. All right. So that's a very important thing because I'll demonstrate you while I execute the project. Okay, I'm going to have this web XML little modified, not too much, probably the versions, and streamline the welcome file. So let's be the web content, web NF, and web XML. I will have this instead of this. There's not much difference. It's just I've added a context parameter and the versions, instead of 4 having 3.1 things. It's fine. We'll see. Not a big deal. So here the welcome file is faces index.xhtml. And if you see in the design view, we're probably changed with the version here. That's from 4.0 to 3.1 with different namespaces and schema locations. All right, so that's web XML. And faces, it tells which version of JSF you're using, this would also have a design view, probably. So it is, so what happens is during runtime, it actually downloads all these libraries from the schemas and namespaces for using. And then glass-based web, this is what I was talking about. There's nothing to be worried about. That's fine, because it will be using those files, Maven files during runtime. That's my context root. So that's all good. Now what I will have is, I should have the resources from the web content. I should have the resources that consists of CSS, font, images, and JS, along with the 4 web files, right? So I have those files. I'll copy them, but I'll probably teach you how to create them as well. So you have resources and the 4 HTML file created under web content. For the task, you have some source file packages. I'll just copy them and source. I'll just paste it here. So once I do that and I do refresh, all those files should reflect in my file here. Okay, that's fine. We'll see what error. So never be afraid of errors. Errors are a good thing because it will teach you what caused the issue, and you can then find a way how to fix it. This web XML got some issues, it seems, but don't worry, we'll see that. Nothing. Okay, that is fine. That should not be an issue. That's just a warning. It references to index.xml that doesn't exist. Now it exists. Probably it will remove the warning when it's there. Don't worry. So yeah, because the project is automatically built, you'll see related manage bean being created here. So there is a build going on. If you want to see what things are happening, it is doing some CDI injections, and it's in progress. Okay, the build is now successful because Eclipse doesn't is like automatic build happens when you make a change. You don't get to actually do the build part. It is done by an AND file or a deployment descriptor file. It happens in the back and behind the scenes. So now your project is actually ready. What I'll do, properties. I'll do a double check with the build path. Libraries, they're all good. And I should know where it is running. The server, it is Week2 demo that I've created for this specific project. Now I will start this specific server. So once I see the server starting, I'll see some server logs as well. So you can see here at this corner, server logs. So if I open up server log file, open server log. You can see it's been constantly adding more and more lines to it. Hibernate validator 6.02. So Hibernate validator 6.02. So I have multiple places I can see. Some things are not been reflected here. That's why I always have a Sublime text to have a look. So this is started and synchronized. Now it is ready. You can see there is nothing inside deployed application. Now what I do is simple right click and run as server. So it is publishing to the server. All good. 0% published. So publishing is nothing but copying the WAR file, the web archive, to the server. You can see the progress here. Cool. So the server has, so it is now running. So basically, you can run this from any client, all right? I'll just open up this to show it to you. I've actually modified the code. That's why it is showing some warnings, but don't worry, I'll explain that everything. You should not have an iota of doubt when you leave the class. So this is actually HTTP this. So HTTP is the transport protocol. Localhost is the server. This is the TCP port number. And after that, this is the web context root. Basically, if I remove that, it is actually responding you back with Glassfish server. So basically, when you make this, localhost is the host name where Glassfish is installed, and you are calling 8080 port. And when you put the context path, you're telling what to run and get a response from Glassfish. So you get this. And if you use faces / index.xhtml, if you request for this specific resource, you'll get this, the same page. Because what you're getting by accessing the context root is same as the welcome file. Remember, in the welcome file here, you said you get faces / index.xhtml from the server for me. Okay. Now, if I say, okay, forget about faces, just get me index.xhtml, what do you think it will get? This is the, if you view the page source, it probably has that same JSF page, but it is just displaying you the HTML content. Sorry, somebody says he's disconnected. So Pratik, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can. He was disconnected and he rejoined the meeting. I just let him in.
All right, good, thank you. So where I was, cool. So this is the same thing that you would see when you do preview of your index page. You see, this is the preview of your index page. Okay, before we run into some explanation, the index page, and then if I want from the server, I have this. Okay, now if I want to see the detail of this specific property, what do I click? I click here. So there is two things here. If you put your mouse hover over here and you see down, you can see what hyperlink it's going to go. So if you see down, it is showing index.xhtml hash. I don't want to go there, but it will still work. It's not working. The reason is in the code, it's a command link. All right, this view, one is hyperview, another is view. So this is view, this is hyperview. So this is command link. Command link will work only when it is inside a form. I have changed the code a bit. I have transferred it from here to there. I have actually modified the code before I showed it to you. When I make a change in the pages, I need to refresh and redeploy it. But let's see if that works. Okay, it doesn't work. That's fine. Because I'll tell you actually why it should be different. What do you mean should we change it as well? So actually what I'm showing you is actually modified code. Modified code that should be proper. So hyperview, when you click on it, it will show you the URL. So the URL will change here, you see. It is asking you to return the page detail.html with property ID as 1. Cancel it, it'll go back. So this hyperview at the bottom, you can see it's a link that navigates the outcome to detail.xhtml page by passing a parameter, a get parameter called property ID, and passing a value into it. All right. Similarly, if I click on this, I'll get property ID 2. I would also get the values. I'll show you what's the mechanism behind it.
Sunil,
So, yeah.
do we need to rebuild the project after we make changes into it?
Yes, that's why I didn't do it now. I will do it only when I have completed demonstrating you a few things.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Because building of the project takes some time. Yeah. So when you click on here, you can actually see the URL you're trying to visit. And that should be how it is, because I know the URL that I'm trying to visit. I can actually just simply copy that URL and change the value, and I should still get the answer. I should still get the response back, proper response back. So you should be constructing it this way. I'll tell you what modification changes that you need to do and the mechanism behind it. Before I go ahead with the code demonstration, I'll probably give you a 7 minutes break. It's 7:05. I will return back at 7:12. All good? Meanwhile, you can read the document or do whatever, drink water, go to kitchen, have some food or something. I'll see you in 7 minutes. 7:05, 7:12. Okay, guys, welcome back. You guys are able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, all right. Somebody asked me, should we change it as well? Let's first do it the original one, and then I'll tell you what to make changes based on the explanation. All right. So original one would be this, a little bit of this, and then this. Going back to here, and content. Okay, and then okay. Now if I go to see this, I don't know if I did that properly. So original one was this one. Okay, this is my form, and because it's a form, the links that is provided is command link. You can have multiple forms in a page, but at one time you'll be able to submit only one form. Just remember that. That's applicable in all stuff. So inside form, when you're having command link, soon we will go through this code. So once I have this, what I will do is, this is the original one. So I'll remove this. I will do a quick clean. And once it is cleaned, I will do run as on the server. Okay. So it started publishing. So this is the original one, the clean one, a very fine one. This is same as faces I told you before. So you click on view, you can see the link down here, this area. So if you click on view, you see the details, but you don't know what actually you are seeing. But now you see this URL is showing faces detail. So there is some kind of mix up happening with the URL. If I go to delete, this mix up again happens at the URL. Now I'm at index, view all, I'm at index, add, sorry, for Uni Road, suburb coffee list, Vic 3111, size, number of bedroom, price 40. So if I do submit, please enter a price. I don't know if it is asking for a format. I think it's asking for a format.
Yeah, dollar. Yeah.
Yeah. So once it has been submitted, right? Ideally, you should automatically be navigated back to the home page. So you are given a construct, but you are being asked to prepare something much more graceful. This is really good. A lot of effort has been spent by your tutors. Elliot has spent a lot of effort in cleaning and building this, which is good. But try if you can make it further better. So this is the existing thing. You can edit the things. You can never edit an ID. You can always edit the attributes of the object. This is how the application is like. Number of bedrooms is 5, save. But once you save, you should automatically go back to the home page. You see, I came back to the index page, but I'm still with edit.xhtml. So this is the thing that happens when you use command link instead of h link. So you need to know what exactly you need to use, where you need to use, what kind of JSF things you need to use. That's what I was mentioning about. So what I will do is I'll do the changes in front of you. I don't need a form for this. All right. Because only thing that I submit is the add and view all thing. That's all I submit. The rest all I navigate. So I can put this here. And these ones, instead of showing command link, I will show you one example where I use an hyperlink. So there will be the command link existing. I will simply add another view with that parameter. So remember when I was talking to you a few moments back, in this page here, this one is command link, but this one is hyperlink. So every time you actually don't know what code you will write here, right? So what you can do is you can simply use the palette. This is a very useful stuff to build web pages. You don't have to write code. You just simply know what things you need to do where. All right. So I need JSF HTML palettes. I'll click JSF HTML. I need so if you need a data table, just drag and drop a data table. It will create a data table, but I don't need a data table. I just need cancel. I don't need a data table. I need just a link. Where are you? Link. Is it in JSF Slates? Okay. So you got a link. So just drag this, place it where you want. All right. it will add things there, and then you can put what do you want to display. This is the tabular style display. So let me just put this hyperlink, not there, but in edit. Okay. Just before edit. And I want to call it as value is equal to hyper edit. I want to maintain the tabular sequencing display, and I want, so form has an action to perform, whereas hyperlink is just going to a separate page. So the action is, I don't have an action, I have outcome. That means I'm just navigating to a page, and I want to navigate. You can just have edit dot xhtml. If you want it from the server and you want to have that navigation URL very consistent, you should always use faces/this. Now to this hyperlink, when I go, I want to pass a parameter to it, and that parameter should be the parameter name is property ID, and the value is status index.1. So what is this status? This is an expression language, and anything that binds an expression language is generally a managed bean. Okay, so this is binding some managed bean. You might be thinking, but no, if you go up and have a look, this specific line, UI repeat, the ID is my repeat, is just giving it an ID. You can give document ID to any part of the HTML page. The value is property application. This is a managed bean. This, if it's not a managed bean, he might have placed it as in controller. Yeah, this is a controller. So it is looking for property application, and properties is the attribute. So it is looking for this specific attribute inside property application. So what does, so when I visit this specific class, the constructor will be called, isn't it? So let's see what's there in the constructor. This is the constructor. So inside the constructor, it says expression language context, EL context, from the faces context, that is the program which is running, get the current instance, get the expression language context, and then from the expression language context application, resolve the expression language resolver and pass the context and get me property managed bean. So you now know that it is looking for an object inside the web server container. Inside the web server container, something called as manage bean, and the name is property manage bean. And you might be thinking, currently there has been no manage bean other than property application, so it should return me a null. But no, hold on, let's see what is this property managed bean. We go to the managed bean in the server file, property managed bean. So it has a constructor, the constructor is empty, that is cool, no issues. It has some set of methods. Now the most important thing here is this manage bean. This manage bean is so one thing that Pratik touched, something called a serializable. Serializable means saving the state of the object. If you have made a class as serializable, that means you can save the state of that object and retrieve it back. So this property manage bean is session scoped. So everything that has a scope defined is actually a manage bean. Some in the JSF architecture diagram, you call them as controllers, some as manage bean, but ultimately they all are manage bean. So this manage bean has session scope, and so it just looks for that manage bean from the scope. At the moment, it's not there, the session scope. So let's go back to property application. Okay, so property manage bean. So it just gets that object saved into this specific value. All right. So this is when this property application runs, when property application object is first created, by dependency injection, you have manage being been injected into it. Okay, that means you want to do something from the call some functions from the manage bin, it is available in this. Okay, now properties, which because this program that you are running today is a standalone web project that doesn't have any connectivity with the database. Okay, so it doesn't have any connectivity with the database. So everything that is being added or deleted or edited is actually stored into an array list, and that array list is for this property application is this specific attribute. Now it assigns properties, specifies some memory object, and update property list. Let's go back to this update property list. So in update property list, it checks if the properties is not null and greater than 0. It does nothing. But at the moment, property is null because it's just been initialized. So it will go for search all. So when it goes to search all, it first calls properties clear. So clear is this array list function that it clears everything from the property. So list is an implementation. Where did I go? Can I move this a little down? Yeah. And then it loops through the manage bin get all properties. So when it does that, get all properties from the manage bin, get all properties returns a list of properties. What properties? So common instance, property repository, get property list. So common instance, property repository. So this is a static variable. So if it is a static variable, property list, so when I come here, this gets initialized. So when this gets initialized, it does have that property list added with property repository having initialization of the property, and this initialization of the property adds to the common instance, adds the common instance property static values first, second, third, and fourth. That's why when you run the program for the first time, you are seeing 4 properties there. And what is this common instance property first? So you see this is a static property value. That means when you refer to this specific class, you actually access that specific variable. You don't have to create it. Remember, static variables are shared by all objects of that class. So if you want to access a variable there, static variable is probably common to all objects of this class. So when it is doing this in the initialization, when I refer to this specific class, it probably have those 4 properties. And the get property is actually returning me the list of all those 4 properties. Okay. So we are doing thorough deep diving here. So we came back here with a list of properties, and then this list of properties from the property managed bean is retrieved, and it loops through each individual property and adds it to the properties of this specific managed bean, all right, which is application scoped. Now, depending upon the scope of the managed bean, the life cycle of the bean in the web container will differ. Applications scope has the full life cycle. It will start and end when the application exits. So whenever you run this program again and again, you'll have those 4 properties by default added. Now it adds each individually those 4 properties to this specific property, this specific attribute. Now this attribute has a list of 4 properties. So in the index page, when it refers to the managed bean property application, remember this P is small and this class name is capital. Either you can change the value in the named parameter, or even if you don't change it, by default, you can use this manage bean as starting with small p of the classes. Now look, Pratik has explained you about this model view and controllers. For JSF, in JSF context, everything that has a scoping is a managed bean, irrespective what names you give it. Okay. If you have a annotation that has @named, if you have annotation @managed, they're all managed bean. If you call it as a managed bean, it is managed by the server container, web container. All right. And they will be initialized in the sequence of their accessing, and they will be garbage collected back based on their lifecycle scope. So we got till here, property applications, and here we saw properties being added with all those 4 properties. And now when I'm accessing property application, these all things happen in the backend. And now the properties attribute have those 4 properties. Just like you had a for loop that does, where did I see that? Just like you have this for loop, right? For property P in property list. In JSF language, UI repeat is something, a part which will be repeated again and again by the, once it translates that part, it will repeat again and again. You see, this web page is dynamic. So this part of the code is repeated again and again. That is achieved using this UI repeat. Now what it does here is very simple. It assigns each individual property of that list in properties to a variable called property. And var status is nothing but the index of the array list. Okay. So when I'm clicking on something called as hyperview, and the outcome is faces detail.xhtml, what I'm doing is I'm passing a get parameter. Remember, when I'm going to visit a link, it is a get request. When I submit a form, it is a post request. So when I click on that part, I pass property ID with a value of that index status +1. You know, in computer language, in array list, if you want to access the first value, you will have to do array list 0. Correct? Correct or wrong? Correct. I am correct. I don't need to confirm you that. I'm just saying that if I transfer here in the hyperview, property ID 0, there is nothing called property ID 0. Correct? So in order to get user some kind of understanding that he is passing a proper property there, so I'm passing index 0 +1 as the value. This is, you can still keep it as, you can still pass it as 0. All you have to do is what happens in the back end with this value. Okay, so I pass faces detail. This is the outcome. This is the outcome, and this is the get attribute. Now coming back here. So when I click on this, I go visit this page, pass the get attribute this with this specific value. Because I am already passing array index ++, before I retrieve the element from the array, I have to do array element --. So what happens when I visit this page, detail.xhtml? So I'll visit this page, detail.xhtml. So this page will be passed and displayed to me. So it has this manage bin property controller, and it's showing me all these details. So this is the source code. So before it retrieves value from this manage bin is basically the model of this JSF page. So there is a JSF page, and this is the model. These manage bins are like models. Okay. Don't get confused when Pratik explained you the model, view, and controller. He's right. That is from the architecture point of view. But when you look at just the JSF, all managed beans, they are models. View is the JSF thing, and controller is the one, are those managed beans which actually does that navigation. So there are a couple of things that you need to revise. Anyway, let's look at the property controller. So when I visit this specific detail page, this property controller manage bin will be initialized. So let's find property controller. This is initialized. So when this is initialized, constructor will be called. So when the constructor is called, what it does, it tries to get, so you have passed a parameter here, right? So it has to get this parameter. Based on the parameter, it has to retrieve the object from the list. So what it does is, from the faces context, it is getting the current instance and getting the external context and using the request parameter map to get the parameter property ID. So if I would have passed, here Sunil, in that case, I would see the get parameter is Sunil is equal to 1. And in my property controller, I'll have to get from the external context the request parameter Sunil. But because it is parameter ID, property ID, I'm getting property ID. All right. I'm getting the property ID and passing it to an integer, assigning it to property ID. Cool. So when this specific object is created, the attribute property ID is already set with an integer with the value that is actually passed here. All good? Coming back to the detail page. So output label, what do you want to display? Property controller, properties, property ID to be displayed. All good. And then in the address, from the controller property, display the address. Okay, so when you say address, it does get address. So in the property controller, so hold on. In the constructor, after property was set, there was something else. From the context, it got the current context. From the context, resolving the application and the expression language, it tried to get the property application. Now this property application is application scope. That means if I have accessed this property application, it is already floating somewhere in that web container. I'm trying to get it from the context. And I'm unboxing that object into property application type. And I'm trying to get the property from get property method. So this property application, once it is set, you remember this property application has an attribute called properties, and that properties has the list of all properties. Those are being displayed here. So yeah, this is actually the properties attribute of property application. So once you call this method inside the controller constructor, it will again get the property application app, and from the app it gets the properties. This is the same process in which it is trying to get that specific serialized instance of property application from the web container by parsing the faces context and returning the properties get property. So just like how you access a specific object in an array, I want to get the second object in an array. What should I do? Array bracket
3.
So if my
the index position would be 3.
So no. I want the second object in the array list. What should I pass?
Second object would be 1. Yes.
1.
Yeah. 0, 1. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So I have clicked on the second link, and the get parameter which is passed is actually index is 1, and the parameter which is passed is 1 plus 1, which is 2. So before I retrieve the element from that array list, I should actually send there 1 to get the array index 2. Sorry, array index 1.
1. Yeah. 1.
Okay.
2.
So I need to decrement the 2 by 1. So that's what I do, minus minus. And then it returns me that property, which is set here. So basically this controller constructor does everything. So when it is initialized. Now in the detail part, if you have a preview, because everything is set in the constructor of this controller, you have the ID, you have the address, you have access to number of bedroom, price, size, contact person, toString, everything. All good? That's how you see the details of a particular thing. All right, so if I click on here, what it is, why it is like this. Oh, okay, this is the wrong one. Okay, this is the right one. Okay. Don't get misled. Don't get misled by why it is showing confirm submission. Sorry, I did deploy that, right? Sorry, just a second. Probably it is cached here. Let me look at the okay, I haven't actually made the change, isn't it? I have just shown you the initial one, and I need to make that change here. Okay. So this is done. So here, when you use the JSF page, this is a managed bean. So in this specific page, you have title controller as managed bean. So whenever this managed bean is accessed first, an instance of that specific managed bean will be created in the web container, and the constructor will be called, and then it initializes that title to real estate agency. That's where you see real estate agency. So if I show in open in browser, I did not save the change. All right, I need to undeploy this. Okay. I moved the form. I made this as an hyperlink. And then I need to refresh. I need to check nothing is deployed. Then I need to clean. And then I can run on the server. So while it is starting up, let's see what is there in that JSF page. The JSF page contains, this is an external HTML with an XML file, and it tells the DTD type, doc type, and then it tells this is the namespace we are using. We are using the set of, so everything that starts with F is actually JSF core libraries. Just like you do import libraries in a Java class, this is how you import libraries in a JSF file. So you have core components, you have facelets JSF components, then you have JSF HTML components H, and then pass-through components P. So there are a few more set of components, advanced components. If you have seen this, you have AX, rich faces. These are simply ultimate stuff. You love to use them, but this is the beginning. Try to understand what's happening. So this is how you import a given library external resource. Usually Bootstrap, JavaScript and all, you should use just a reference to a link. But yeah, even if you have the libraries or the resources somewhere here, you can always refer them. So there are, can somebody tell me how many ways you can embed or use external JavaScript or a CSS in a web page?
I think CSS is done three
Three
ways.
types. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 ways.
Yeah. Cool. That's right. One is referencing it here, and other is directly on the element ID, and third is referencing it to an external style set. Good. So this is pretty much similar, just like HTML, but a little different. Remember, when we ask you to submit projects, we'll not entertain anything without CSS. All right. CSS is just like that lipstick, which makes the girl look beautiful. Okay. So if you want your project to look beautiful, you need to have some scripting, you need to have some CSS. If you don't have CSS, it won't look very appealing or beautiful. Okay. So you understood. Based on it, you can see how it goes. All right, there are a few things I want to tell you about the ad page. If you see, there is something called as F convert number, F validate long range, something called as required is equal to true. These attributes, if you use it in a text field, the required is true will make sure that you enter that value before submitting the form. If you submit the form without without inputting any values in a required field, it will simply give you an error message, and that will be the H message. So it will tell you, please enter the street number. And look, for a field, if it is not valid, that means its class is going to be turned as has error. So when it has error, the message will be displayed with some extra style, which is if it has error class, then it will be displayed with color red. That's what you would have seen when it's running. You go to add, and then if you keep something empty and submit, it shows you this. And you can actually do right click, not here. If you want to actually edit or do learning something, right? Don't use this internal Netscape navigator. Use the Chrome browser. It is very helpful for development or inspecting or anything like that. Okay. So if you do submit, it will show all these red. You can actually do inspect. Inspect on the console, see label warning, what is the background color. You can if you want to change the color, what style sheets are used, what properties are used, all those things you can see. Okay. All right. Before we actually, it was a initial class, so I had to demonstrate and share you some concept. If you have any questions you want to ask.
Yeah, Sunil, is it possible to somehow get the access to recording of these tutorials?
Yeah, so this recording is done, so I'll probably share it, but the recording is not available till next few hours, and I would be busy with work tomorrow. So yeah, I'll probably keep this recording uploaded by tomorrow evening or day after.
Right, thank you.
Do you have any questions from today's class? Did you guys understood the whole project, the components and everything? This is very simple because you don't have a database component yet. All right, but I did explain to you the purpose of the Java, all the Java classes, most of it, some of the web resources, and the web components. Cool. If you have any questions, shoot out, else we'll see you tomorrow in the
Sunil,
class.
one of the student has a question. Jengkun, can you please project needs Node.js? No, it doesn't.
Okay. So in the JavaScript, it uses npm. Npm is the package manager, node package manager. So is that the reason why did you ask?
He says that his Eclipse tips him to install Node.js.
No, you don't need to. But some of the package will be taken care by the package manager. You don't have to. And yes, guys, when you submit your work, you know, I don't want you to submit the same thing, put it into a Git, and give it to me. Absolutely, that is not acceptable to me. When I want to see your work, here, I want to see this page very beautiful. This is already fantastic. Elliot has done fantastic work, but I don't want you to just submit the same work. All right. I want you to make changes, add stuff, and demonstrate at least something using JavaScript. If your work doesn't have two components, Bootstrap and JavaScript, even if you get this functional, I won't give you HD for this week. All right. This is off the books. I should stop recording.
Guys, and also can